She had trusted him with her heart, her future, and her family's entire fortune, and he had lit the match and watched it all burn. Left penniless on the cold streets of London, scorned by the very society that once adored her, Evangeline Whitehall swore an oath. She would never be weak again, and she would never trust another man. But oaths are made to be broken. When the most powerful, enigmatic, and coldest man in England, the Duke of Kingston, finds her in the gutter and makes an impossible offer, she is faced with a terrifying choice: remain a victim or become a duchess by selling the one thing she had left, her name. The air in the Whitehall townhouse on Mount Street, Mayfair, was always thick with the scent of hothouse lilies and expensive French polish. Evangeline Whitehall, at 20 years of age, moved through it like a sunbeam. She was the talk of the 1842 London season, not for her beauty, though she had it, but for her spirit. Her laughter was quick, her wit sharp, and her heart, unfortunately, wide open. That heart belonged, entirely and recklessly, to Marcus Thorne. Marcus was devastatingly handsome, with a poet's eyes and a businessman's ambition. He was a junior partner at the same firm that managed her father's investments, a man ostensibly on the rise. To Evangeline's father, Lord Richard Whitehall, Marcus was a sound investment in the family's future. To Evangeline, he was simply the future. "You are staring again, Evangeline," her younger sister Harriet teased, poking her with a needle from her embroidery hoop. Evangeline sighed, turning from the window where she had been watching for Marcus's carriage. "I am not. I am merely contemplating the weather." "The weather is named Marcus, and he is 3 minutes late," Harriet said dryly, tying off a pink thread. "You are hopeless." "And you are jealous," Evangeline retorted, but without malice. When Marcus arrived, he was all apologies and breathless charm. He bowed low over her hand, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners. "My apologies, my love. A delay at the exchange. Fortunes are being made and lost in the blink of an eye. But none of it matters now that I am here." He presented her with a single, perfect gardenia. She pressed it to her nose, inhaling the creamy scent, intoxicated by him. That evening, at the Duchess of Richmond's ball, he drew her into an alcove, the sound of the orchestra a dull rhythm behind the velvet curtain. "Evangeline," he whispered, his voice urgent, "I cannot wait. This game of chaperones and stolen glances. I want you as my wife. Now. Marcus, you know father insists we wait until my 21st birthday." "Your father," Marcus said, his smile tightening just slightly, "is a cautious man. But I have an opportunity. A shipping venture, Evangeline. It will double our wealth. It will secure us forever. But it requires immediate capital. Your dowry, darling. If your father will release it to me now, as your intended husband, I can make us the wealthiest couple in London." She hesitated. "Father is so particular about the funds. Does he not trust me?" Marcus pulled back, his face a mask of wounded pride. "Does he not? Or is it you? No, of course not, Marcus. I trust you with my life." "Then convince him," he urged, kissing her knuckles. "For us." She did. It took a week of pleading, tears, and passionate declarations of Marcus's brilliance. Lord Whitehall, worn down by his favourite daughter and blinded by the promise of his own legacy expanding, finally relented. He transferred the entirety of Evangeline's substantial dowry and a significant portion of his own operating capital to Marcus Thorne's management. The date of the wedding was set for 1 month later. The first sign something was wrong was when the deliveries from her dressmaker, Madame Dubois, suddenly stopped. Then the caterers requested an unusual cash deposit up front. Evangeline confused, went to her father's study. She found him slumped over his desk, a letter clutched in his hand, his face the colour of wet ash. "Father? What is it? You look terribly ill." Lord Whitehall lifted his head, his eyes vacant. "He's gone," he whispered. "Who is gone? Is Marcus? Is he hurt?" "Gone," her father repeated, his voice cracking. "With everything. The dowry, the investments, the liquidity from the bank. It's all gone. He took a ship from Dover 2 days ago, the Sea Serpent, bound for New York." The letter was not from Marcus. It was from the bank, informing Lord Whitehall that his accounts were overdrawn and his credit line terminated. Marcus had systematically liquidated every asset he could touch. "No," Evangeline said. "It was not a plea. It was a denial. There is a mistake, a terrible mistake. He loves me." "He loved your money, child," her father choked out, a single, terrible sob escaping him. "And I gave it to him." The fallout was immediate and brutal. They were not just poor, they were ruined. The Whitehall name was synonymous with fool. Lord Richard Whitehall, unable to face the disgrace, suffered a catastrophic stroke just 4 days later. He died without speaking another word. The bailiffs arrived within the week. Evangeline and Harriet stood on the pavement of Mount Street, watching as the furniture they had known their whole lives was carted away. The lilies, the Polish, the laughter, it all evaporated. Society, which had fawned over Evangeline, now cut her dead. She was the girl who had been duped, the daughter of the fool who had lost it all. As a final, crushing blow, a letter arrived, postmarked from Dover, clearly written before Marcus had sailed. It contained no apology. "My dearest Evangeline, consider this a lesson in business. Sentiment is a liability, and love is a currency for fools. Your father should have known better than to trust a man with ambition. And you? You should have known your only real asset was your dowry. Now that I have it, I have no further use for you." Empty Evangeline did not cry. She stood in the damp, rented room in Holborn that she and Harriet now shared, the letter crumpling in her fist. The sunbeam had been extinguished. In its place was something hard, cold, and sharp. She looked at her sister, whose frail health was already failing in the cold, damp air. "Evangeline," Harriet whispered, terrified of the look on her sister's face. "He will not be the end of us," Evangeline vowed, her voice low and serrated. "I will work, I will provide for you, but I will never, ever be that weak again. I will never trust a soft word, I will never trust a promise, and I will never trust a man. They are all liars, they are all thieves, I swear it." Life in the gutter was a brutal education. Evangeline Whitehall, once destined to be a society jewel, became a ghost, haunting the grimy streets of London. She secured work at a high-end dress shop, not as a fashionable consultant, but in the back rooms. She was a seamstress, her fingers, once trained on the pianoforte, now raw and pricked from endless 14-hour days of stitching pearls onto gowns for girls who had once been her friends. She learned to be invisible. She kept her head down, her face pale and thin, her glorious auburn hair scraped into a severe bun. She and Harriet lived in 2 cramped rooms above a bakery, the constant smell of yeast a sickening reminder of the simple comforts they could barely afford. Harriet's cough grew worse, and the cost of medicine was a mountain Evangeline climbed every single week. Her vow of distrust became her armor. When the shop manager, a portly man named Mr. Henderson, tried to corner her in the linen closet, offering easier work in exchange for companionship, she did not blush or cry. She calmly picked up the heavy iron pressing weight from a nearby table. "If you touch me, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice as cold as the unheated room, "I will ensure you are never able to companion anyone again." Am I understood?" He gaped, then scurried away. She was not fired. He was too afraid of her. It was on a bitter November afternoon, nearly a year after their ruin, that her life twisted again. Evangeline was on a rare errand, delivering a finished gown to a demanding client in Belgravia. She was rushing back, the thin wool of her cloak doing little to fight the icy rain, when a carriage accident blocked the street. A massive, gleaming black carriage, pulled by 4 matched black horses, had locked wheels with a smaller, flimsier, hansom cab. The cab driver was shouting, but the owner of the grand carriage had not even bothered to emerge. A footman was handling the dispute. As Evangeline tried to slip past, the cab driver, furious, shoved her. "Get out of the way, you filthy rat!" Evangeline stumbled, the empty dress box falling into the mud. She fell hard onto the slick cobblestones, her knee striking the curb with a sickening crack of pain. She cried out, more in anger than agony. The door of the black carriage opened. A man emerged. He did not step out. He descended. He was tall, impossibly so, and dressed in a perfectly tailored black coat that seemed to drink the meagre daylight. His face was all sharp angles and aristocratic boredom. His dark hair was brushed back, and his eyes, the color of slate, swept over the scene with absolute disinterest. This was Alexander Vance, the Duke of Kingston. He was a legend in London, the Duke of Winter. He owned half of the city, vast shipping lines that rivaled the East India Company, and mines in the north. He was obscenely wealthy, utterly powerful, and rarely seen. He had no friends, attended no balls, and was, at 30, the most eligible and unreachable man in England. His gaze passed over the shouting cabby, the distressed footman, and landed on Evangeline, who was struggling to rise, her face white with pain and humiliation as she tried to retrieve the soiled box. "Thomas," the Duke said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that cut through the rain. "Handle this." His footman, Thomas, bowed. "Your Grace, the man is demanding." "I was not speaking of the cabman," the Duke said, his eyes still on Evangeline. "I was speaking of her. Help the woman up. She is injured." Evangeline froze. She did not want his help. She did not want anyone's help. "I am fine," she snapped, grabbing the curb and pulling herself upright, ignoring the sharp pain in her knee. The Duke of Kingston raised one dark eyebrow. It was the first flicker of interest she had seen on his face. He watched her for a long moment, his gaze analytical, as if she were a horse he was considering for purchase. She met his stare with pure, unadulterated defiance, her chin high, mud dripping from her hem. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Then, without another word, he turned, climbed back into his carriage, and shut the door. The footman quickly paid the cab driver an exorbitant sum to silence him, and the carriage moved on. Evangeline limped back to the shop, her knee throbbing, her mind replaying the encounter. She hated him. She hated his effortless power, his casual dismissal of the world, and the brief, pitying glance he had given her. 2 days later, Mr. Henderson approached her, his face pale and sweaty. "Miss Whitehall, you have a visitor. He is waiting in my office." Evangeline's blood ran cold. Had Marcus returned? But Mr. Henderson looked terrified, not lecherous. She walked into the small, cramped office. The Duke of Kingston was standing by the window, dwarfing the room. He was looking down at the street, his hands clasped behind his back. "Your Grace," Evangeline said, her voice trembling slightly, though she willed it to be steady. He turned. In the close confines of the room, his presence was overwhelming. "Miss Whitehall, or is it Lady Evangeline?" "It is Miss Whitehall," she said stiffly. "My father is dead." "Yes, Lord Richard Whitehall." A sentimental fool who trusted the wrong man with his finances. You are his daughter, the one who convinced him." Evangeline felt the blood drain from her face. "How dare you?" "I dare because it is the truth," he said, not cruelly, but as a statement of fact. "I have made it my business to know the truth. Marcus Thorne, he fled to New York with over £50,000, your £50,000. "Why are you here?" she whispered, clutching the doorframe. "To mock me? To offer me charity? I want none of it." "Charity?" He almost smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression. "I never give charity, Miss Whitehall. It is a wasteful endeavour. I am here to make a business proposition." He took a step closer. She did not retreat. "I find myself in need of a wife," he stated, as if discussing the weather. "My grandfather's will is particular. I must be married by my 31st birthday, which is in 3 months, and I must produce a legitimate heir within 2 years, or my entire estate fragments and goes to a cousin I despise." Evangeline stared at him. "What does this have to do with me?" "I require a duchess. You, Miss Whitehall, require security. You require a name that is not stained by ruin. You require access to the best physicians for your sister, whose lungs, I am told, are failing." She flinched, horrified that he knew about Harriet. "I saw you in the street 2 days ago," he continued, his voice even. "You were in pain, humiliated, and yet you refused my footman's help. You looked at me not with supplication, but with contempt. You are not a simpering miss. You are a survivor. You are, I suspect, entirely pragmatic. You also come from good blood, which is suitable for an heir. You are proposing—" "I am proposing a contract, not a marriage of love. The very idea offends me. I am offering a transaction. You will marry me. You will become the Duchess of Kingston. Your every bill will be paid. Your sister will have a suite of rooms at my country estate, with round-the-clock medical care. You will be one of the most powerful women in England." The room was spinning. And in return? "In return," the Duke said, his slate-grey eyes locking onto hers, "you will be my Duchess. You will run my homes. You will host my political dinners flawlessly. You will be discreet, intelligent, and composed at all times, and you will provide me with the required heir. Once that heir is born and secure, we will lead separate lives, under the same roof. You will have your freedom, your wealth, and my protection. I will have my inheritance." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You will want for nothing, Miss Whitehall, except perhaps affection, which, I gather, you no longer trust anyway." He had read her perfectly. He was offering her a cage of gold, but it was a cage that would save Harriet's life. It was a bargain with the devil, a devil dressed in the finest wool from Savile Row. "You swear never to trust again," she had vowed. This wasn't trust. This was a trade. It was the only language she understood anymore. "When?" she asked, her voice a dry rasp. "Tomorrow, by special license." "And my sister?" "My personal physician, Dr. Robert Anselm, will retrieve her this evening. She will be taken to Kingston Hall in Surrey immediately." He offered his hand. She looked at it, long-fingered, powerful, and utterly devoid of warmth. She placed her raw, needle-pricked hand into his. His grip was firm, sealing the devil's bargain. "Very well, Your Grace," Evangeline said, her spine turning to steel. "It seems you have bought yourself a duchess." The wedding was as cold and impersonal as the contract it represented. It took place not in St. George's, Hanover Square, with crowds and flowers, but in the Duke of Kingston's study in his London mansion, a cavernous, dim room lined with thousands of books. The only attendees were the Archbishop, a trembling clerk, and the Duke's solicitor, Mr. Harrison, who served as witness. Evangeline wore a simple dove-grey day dress, the best she owned. The Duke wore his usual immaculate black frock coat. He looked as though he were attending a business meeting, not his own wedding. When the Archbishop prompted him, Alexander slid a ring onto Evangeline's finger. It was not a delicate gold band. It was a massive, square-cut diamond, flanked by sapphires, so heavy it felt like a beautiful manacle. It was the Kingston ring, a piece of history, and it felt impossibly cold against her skin. I now pronounce you man and wife. The Duke did not kiss her. He simply nodded at the Archbishop. Thank you for your time, Your Grace. Mr. Harrison will see you out. And just like that, Evangeline Whitehall, the ruined seamstress, was gone. In her place stood Her Grace, Evangeline Vance, Duchess of Kingston. Alexander turned to her, his face unreadable. My carriage is waiting. We are removing to Kingston Hall. Dr. Anselm reports that your sister is settled, but she is weak. The country air will serve her better. The journey to Surrey was made in near total silence. Evangeline sat opposite her new husband in the opulent carriage, the velvet squabs a stark contrast to the hard wooden bench of the omnibus she used to take. She watched the grey, rainy landscape slide by, her mind a numb whirlwind. Kingston Hall was not a house, it was a monument, a sprawling Jacobean masterpiece of red brick and towering chimneys. It sat in 1,000 acres of perfectly manicated parkland. A veritable army of servants, led by a formidable housekeeper named Mrs. Davies, was lined up in the entrance hall. Your Grace, Mrs. Davies said, curtsying low, her eyes flickering to Evangeline with undisguised curiosity. Mrs. Davies, this is the Duchess. She is the mistress of this house. Her word is mine. You will see to her every need. Of course, Your Grace. My sister, Evangeline said, her voice stronger than she felt. Where is she? In the East Wing, Your Grace, Mrs. Davies replied. Dr. Anselm is with her. Take me to her. She swept past her husband, ignoring the protocol, and followed the housekeeper up the grand staircase. The Duke watched her go, a flicker of that same strange interest in his eyes. Harriet was in a bed larger than their entire Holborn apartment, surrounded by flowers, with a roaring fire in the hearth. Dr. Anselm, a kind-eyed man, was reading to her. Evie! Harriet cried, her voice thin. Evie, is it true? Are you— I am, Evangeline said, rushing to the bedside and taking her sister's hand. I am the Duchess of Kingston, and you are safe, Harriet. You will have everything you need. I promise. But the Duke? Harriet whispered, looking past her. Alexander had followed her. He stood in the doorway, a dark, intimidating shadow. Miss Whitehall, he said, his voice softer than Evangeline had ever heard it. Welcome to Kingston Hall. You are to rest. Dr. Anselm is the finest physician in England. You will want for nothing. Harriet, overcome, burst into tears of relief. Evangeline held her, glaring at the Duke over her sister's head. He had saved Harriet. He had bought Evangeline. She did not know if she should be grateful or terrified. That night, after a solitary dinner, she was shown to her rooms, the Duchess's suite. It was a world away from the Duke's own chambers in the West Wing. The contract was being honoured, separate lives. But the contract had another clause. There was a knock, not from a servant, a heavy, single rap. She opened the door. Alexander stood there. He had removed his coat, and in his shirt sleeves he seemed less like a duke and more like a man. But his eyes were still cold. Your Grace, she said, her hands balling into fists at her side. Evangeline! It was the first time he had used her given name. We have an agreement, one I intend to see fulfilled. She knew what he meant. The heir. Her body went rigid. This was the payment. This was the part of the bargain she had tried not to think about. "You are afraid," he stated, stepping into the room. "I am not," she lied. "You are. You tremble. Let me be clear. This is as much a duty for me as it is for you. I take no pleasure in it. But it must be done." He expected her to be a passive, terrified bride. But the woman Marcus Thorne had ruined was gone. The seamstress who had threatened Mr. Henderson was not. "Then let us be done with it," she said, raising her chin. She was not a lover. She was not a wife. She was a signatory to a contract. She began to unbutton her dress, her eyes never leaving his. She would not cry. She would not flinch. She would show him the same cold, pragmatic resolve he had shown her. Her actions stopped him. He had expected tears or supplication. He received compliance, a cold, defiant compliance. He watched her for a long, silent moment, his gaze tracing the line of her throat. "Get dressed," he said abruptly. She paused, her fingers on a button. "What?" I said, "Get dressed. It is clear you are distressed. And I am weary from travel. My grandfather's will stipulates an heir within 2 years, not 2 minutes. We have time." He turned and left, closing the door firmly behind him. Evangeline stood alone in the magnificent room, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was confused. He had every right, by law and by their own agreement, to demand his payment. Yet he had walked away. She had prepared herself for a brute, or at least a cold-hearted pragmatist. But the Duke of Winter had just shown a flicker of something she could not name. It wasn't kindness. Perhaps it was honor? She touched the heavy ring on her finger. No, she told herself, rushing to extinguish the thought. It was not honor. It was a strategy. He was a businessman, just like Marcus. He was just a more patient one. She would not be fooled again. Evangeline's new life was a study in gilded isolation. She threw herself into her duties with the same ferocious intensity she had applied to her sewing. If she was to be a duchess, she would be the most efficient, formidable duchess England had ever seen. She rose before dawn, and by the time the Duke emerged for breakfast, they took the meal in the same room, at opposite ends of a 30-foot table, separated by a fortress of silver. She had already met with Mrs. Davies, approved the menus, reviewed the household accounts, and dealt with the mountain of correspondence. She was brilliant at it. She found errors in the ledgers that the Duke's own accountants had missed for years. She renegotiated a contract for coal, saving the estate thousands. She learned the name of every servant, their duties, their families. She was fair, demanding, and utterly respected. Alexander watched. He said nothing, but he noticed. He noticed when she dismissed the head groom for mistreating a horse. He noticed when she reorganized his disaster of a library, not by color as a society fluff would, but by subject and author. And he noticed when she began to read his books. He came into the library late one night to find her curled in a chair by the fire, not with a society novel, but with his own copy of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. "A dense choice for midnight reading, Your Grace," he said from the doorway. Evangeline jumped, closing the book. "I did not hear you. I apologize." "There is no need to apologize for reading. Do you understand it?" "I understand," she said, her chin lifting, "that his theories on the division of labor are sound, but he fails to properly account for the depreciation of human capital when that labor is exploited." Alexander stared at her. He had expected a blank look, perhaps a girlish attempt to impress him. He had not expected a cogent critique. "You have a mind, Duchess," he said slowly. "I have always had a mind, Duke," she retorted, standing. "People simply chose to see other things. Good night." She swept past him. He found himself inhaling the faint scent of her, not the heavy perfumes of society women, but something clean, like soap and starch and the old paper of his books. Their fragile truce was tested at their first public outing, a political dinner for 30 of the most powerful men in Parliament. Evangeline, dressed in the Kingston emeralds, was a vision. The society wives, particularly the venomous Lady Gwendolen Beaumont, were waiting for the ruined Whitehall girl to stumble. "My dear Duchess," Lady Gwendolen said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "it is so wonderful to see you landed on your feet. Such a tragedy. What happened with that dreadful Mr. Thorne? To lose everything, and then to capture the Duke. You must tell us your secret." The table went silent. Evangeline could feel Alexander tense at the head of the table. Evangeline smiled, a cool, bright smile that did not reach her eyes. "Lady Gwendolen, you mustn't mistake a business arrangement for a capture. Mr. Thorne taught me the value of a good investment. My father, bless him, invested in sentiment. I, however, invested in power. And as you can see, my returns are far more substantial." She lifted her wine glass in a toast to her husband. "Wouldn't you agree, Your Grace?" Alexander's slate-grey eyes met hers. A slow, genuine smile, the first she had ever seen, touched his lips. "Absolutely, my dear. A most profitable arrangement." Lady Gwendolen turned scarlet. The men at the table hid their grins. Evangeline had not only defended herself, she had aligned herself perfectly with her husband's ruthless, pragmatic reputation. She had used his own language. Later that night, he came to her chambers again. This time, she was not afraid. She was wary. "You were impressive tonight," he said, standing by her fireplace. "I was merely protecting your name, Your Grace, and my own. You did more than that. You silenced Gwendolen Beaumont, a feat no one has managed in 10 years. He paused. "I find myself grateful. Gratitude is not in our contract, Duke." "No," he agreed. "It is not." He looked at her, truly looked at her, not as a contract or a means to an heir, but as the woman standing before him. "That dress, the emeralds, they suit you. They are the trappings of my position." "Are they?" He stepped closer. "Evangeline, the contract. It is a cold document. But we are not made of stone." "Are we not?" she asked, her voice quiet. "I thought we were. You, the Duke of Winter. And I am the woman who was ruined. My heart is stone, Your Grace. Marcus Thorne turned it to granite." "Granite can be carved," he murmured. He reached out, not to grab her, but to gently touch a stray strand of auburn hair that had escaped her coiffure. His fingers brushed her cheek. It was the lightest, most fleeting of touches, but it sent a shock through her entire body. She recoiled as if burned. "Don't!" The vulnerability in her voice surprised them both. The armor was still in place, but he had found a crack. His expression hardened, his own mask snapping back into place. "My apologies, Duchess. I forgot myself. I will not make the mistake again." He left. Evangeline sank onto her bed, her hand flying to her cheek. She was furious. Furious with him for touching her, and furious with herself for the traitorous jolt of something she had felt. It wasn't love. It couldn't be. It was weakness, and she had sworn never to be weak again. Meanwhile, in the West Wing, Alexander stood at his own window, staring into the darkness. He had married her for her pragmatism. He had married her because he believed her to be as cold and broken as he was. He had a past, too, a past that had taught him that emotion was a weapon used against you. But the woman he had just left was not cold. She was burning. She was just trapped beneath a layer of ice. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Vance, the Duke of Winter, felt the dangerous, unfamiliar urge to melt it. Months bled into a year. A strange, quiet rhythm established itself at Kingston Hall. Evangeline's sister, Harriet, under the care of Dr. Anselm and the country air, grew stronger. Her cough faded, and colour returned to her cheeks. For this, Evangeline felt a deep, dangerous gratitude toward Alexander. He, in turn, began to rely on her. He discussed his shipping ventures with her, impressed by her sharp mind for figures. She became less his duchess and more his partner, in business, if not in bed. The duty of an heir remained unfulfilled, and he, surprisingly, never pressed the issue. Their late-night encounters were now spent in the library, arguing over trade policy, a chessboard between them. The ice was melting, not in a flood, but in a slow, perilous drip. Evangeline found herself watching him, noticing the way he relaxed his shoulders only when he thought he was alone, or the genuine kindness he showed to Harriet. He was not the devil she had imagined. He was just a man, as heavily armored as she was. She was walking in the rose garden, one crisp September afternoon, when a footman approached, carrying a silver salver. "A gentleman, Your Grace. He is waiting in the blue drawing-room." He did not give a name. He said only that he was an old acquaintance of yours. Evangeline frowned. "I have no old acquaintances." But she followed the footman inside. The blue drawing-room was bathed in sunlight. A man stood at the window, staring out, his back to her. He was dressed in the height of fashion, a gaudy American-style suit of bright blue. "You wish to see me?" Evangeline said, her voice clipped. The man turned. The air left Evangeline's lungs. It was Marcus Thorne. He was not the desperate, charming man she remembered. This Marcus was heavier, his face coarser, but he wore an expression of supreme, oily confidence. He was dripping in gold, a thick watch chain, diamond rings, a pearl stickpin. "Evangeline," he breathed, his eyes devouring her. He took in her expensive silk gown, the pearls at her throat, the aura of power that now clung to her. Or should I say, Your Grace? My, you have landed well, far better than I ever imagined. Evangeline's blood turned to ice water. She did not scream. She did not faint. She became perfectly, terrifyingly still. "What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet your first love?" he mocked, stepping toward her. "I have returned from New York, a very wealthy man, thanks in no small part to your father's generous investment in my future. You are not welcome here," she said, each word a chip of ice. "Leave, or I will have you thrown out." "Thrown out? Me?" He laughed. "I don't think so, my dear. You see, I am a partner now in a shipping concern, a very large shipping concern, and I'm here to do business with your esteemed husband. I have a meeting with the Duke of Kingston this afternoon." Evangeline felt sick. "He will never do business with you." "Oh, he will. My venture is sound, and the profits are enormous. The Duke is a businessman above all, is he not? He doesn't care about the past. He cares about the bottom line. I will tell him what you did." "Will you?" Marcus smiled, a predator's smile. "And what will you say?" "My dear husband, please don't do business with this man. He's the one who swindled me, broke my heart, and killed my father." "How? Sentimental. How weak. I thought you were past that. Besides, he already knows. He told you so himself, didn't he? He knows exactly who I am. That's why he'll admire my audacity. He was right. Alexander knew, and Alexander respected profit. What do you want, Marcus? Ah, the real question. He moved closer, invading her space. She stood her ground. He smelled of whiskey and expensive, cloying cologne. I saw you, Evangeline. I saw you in London last week. You are magnificent, more beautiful than you ever were, and you're his. That's what I can't abide. You have no claim on me. I have every claim, he hissed, his charm vanishing. You were mine. I made you. Your ruin was my creation, and so, in a way, is your rise. I want you back, Evie. You are insane. Am I? I'm richer than I've ever been. I can give you more than this cold fish of a duke. I can give you passion, excitement, the life we were supposed to have. Get out. Or I could tell him. Tell him what? He knows everything. Does he? Marcus's eyes glittered. Does he know about the letters you wrote to me? The ones after your father forbade you to see me? The ones where you detailed all his investments, all his bank information? The ones where you told me exactly how to secure the funds? Evangeline's mind went blank. What letters? I never wrote those. Of course you did, darling, Marcus said softly, producing a small, worn piece of paper from his breast pocket. It was her handwriting, or a perfect forgery. I have a whole box of them. Proof that you weren't just a victim, Evangeline. You were my partner, my accomplice. You betrayed your own father. Now, how do you think the cold, honourable Duke of Kingston will feel about that? How will he feel knowing his Duchess, the mother of his future heir, is a common thief and a patricide? She stared at the forged letter. It was brilliant. It used phrases she used. It referenced a private joke. It was a masterpiece of deceit. You monster, she whispered, finally understanding the depth of his malice. I'm a businessman, he corrected her, and I'm here to renegotiate my terms. You will convince your husband to accept my shipping proposal. You will be kind to me. Very, very kind. Or I will burn this life down, just as I burned the last one. Evangeline? What is the meaning of this? Alexander's voice boomed from the doorway. He stood there, his face a thundercloud, looking from his wife's pale, horrified face to the grinning, gaudy man opposite her. Ah, Your Grace, Marcus said, turning and offering a low, mocking bow. Alexander Vance. A pleasure. My name is Marcus Thorne. I was just reacquainting myself with your lovely wife. We are very, very old friends. Alexander's gaze was arctic. He looked at Marcus Thorne as he might look at a piece of filth on his boot. Mr. Thorne, I am aware of who you are. Your reputation precedes you, as does your audacity for daring to set foot in my home. Business, Your Grace, Marcus said smoothly, undeterred. I am here to make you a great deal of money. My proposal is on your desk. I believe the numbers speak for themselves. I trust you won't let personal history cloud your judgment. Alexander's eyes flickered to Evangeline. Her face was a mask of pure terror, but she was silent. Her silence damned her. She should have been screaming, demanding Marcus be thrown out. Instead, she looked guilty. Evangeline, Alexander said, his voice dangerously low. Leave us. We will discuss this acquaintance later. No, Evangeline said, finding her voice. It was trembling. Your Grace. Alexander, you cannot do business with this man. He is poison. Marcus let out a short, sharp laugh. Poison, or just a reminder of a past you'd rather forget? Be careful, my dear. The Duke values honesty. Perhaps you should tell him the whole truth of our partnership. Evangeline flinched as if struck. That tiny, involuntary movement was all Alexander needed to see. His suspicion, a cold seed planted by his own past betrayals, began to sprout. He looked at his wife, at her white face and panicked eyes, and he saw not an innocent victim, but a woman with a secret. "Mr. Thorne," Alexander said, his voice flat, "our meeting is concluded. My solicitor will be in touch." "I look forward to it, Your Grace," Marcus said. He shot Evangeline a look of pure triumph, bowed and strolled out of the room, whistling. The moment the door clicked shut, the silence in the room was deafening. Evangeline's heart was hammering so hard she thought she would be sick. "Explain," Alexander commanded. "There is nothing to explain. He is a liar and a monster. He is the man who ruined me." "He is the man you claim ruined you," Alexander countered, walking toward the fireplace. He did not look at her. He seemed to believe your relationship was collaborative. The blood drained from her face. You cannot possibly believe him." "What am I to believe, Evangeline?" He spun on her, his control finally snapping. His face was a mask of cold fury. "I took you from the gutter. I gave you my name, my protection, my wealth. I gave your sister life. And in return, I asked only for loyalty, for honesty. And the moment a ghost from your past appears, you look at him with terror. Not with the anger of a victim, but the terror of an accomplice about to be exposed." "That is not true," she cried, tears of rage and fear finally welling. "He is lying. He has forged letters. He is threatening me." "Forged letters?" Alexander laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. "How convenient. A perfectly villainous explanation. Tell me, did you forge the letters you wrote to him detailing your father's finances? Did you forge the passion you clearly felt for a man who shared your ambition? No. I loved him. I was a fool. I was a child. You were a child who destroyed her own family," he roared, and the room seemed to shake with his fury. "I knew you were your father's catalyst. I knew you convinced him. But I believed you were naive. I believed you were duped. Now I see the truth. You were his partner. You saw a way out, a way to a faster fortune, and you took it. And when it failed, you played the victim. You played it so well you even fooled me." Every word was a physical blow. He was twisting her past, using her own guilt against her. He was seeing her through Marcus's poisonous lens. "How dare you?" she whispered, her tears drying in the heat of her own fury. "You stand there in your fortress of gold, and you judge me. You, who have never known a day of desperation. You, who bought a wife because you were too cold and empty to win one. You know nothing of what I survived." "I know a liar when I see one," he shot back. "I was married once before, Evangeline. A brief, secret marriage, years ago. A woman I thought I loved. A woman who, it turned to be, loved my title. She plotted with my cousin, the one I despise, to have me declared incompetent. She would have seen me in Bedlam, just to get her hands on my money. I learned my lesson. Trust is a fool's game. And you are the most practiced fool I have ever met." The confession hung in the air. It explained everything. His coldness, his suspicion, his insistence on a contract. He had been betrayed just as she had. But instead of bringing them together, it became the final wedge. "So that's it," she said, her voice dead. "We are the same, you and I. We were both betrayed. But you see, the difference is that my betrayal made me strong, Yours just made you cruel. She turned, her back straight. I will not stay here and be called a thief by the man who— She couldn't finish the sentence. By the man you what? He pressed, his voice soft and dangerous. The man you were beginning to love? Was that part of the long game, Evangeline? To secure the inheritance for yourself? That was the final cut. She stopped, her hand on the doorknob. You are right, she said, looking over her shoulder, her face wiped clean of all emotion. Our contract is broken. My sister is well. She no longer needs your charity. I will have her moved by morning, and I will relieve you of my presence. I am returning your name, your grace. It is a weight I no longer wish to carry. She walked out. She did not run. She did not cry. She walked out of the room, out of the life, and left Alexander Vance, the Duke of Winter, completely and utterly alone in the ruin of his own making. Evangeline did not sleep. She spent the night packing. She had 2 small bags, the same 2 she had arrived with. She took none of the jewels, none of the gowns. She put on the simple grey dress she had been married in. At dawn she went to Harriet's room. Harriet, she said gently, wake up. We are leaving. Harriet, now clear-eyed and stronger, sat up. Leaving? What happened? Did you and the Duke and I have terminated our arrangement? We are going. I have enough money saved from my allowance to secure us passage to a new town, perhaps Bath. We will start over. Evie, no, Harriet cried, clutching her arm. You love him. I see the way you look at him. And he loves you. He loves nothing, Evangeline said, her voice flat. He is incapable of it. Now please, get dressed. As she helped her sister, Alexander was in his study. He had not slept, either. He had spent the night staring at Marcus Thorne's shipping proposal, the numbers blurring before his eyes. He kept replaying the scene, Evangeline's face, the terror, the fury, the final, devastating emptiness in her eyes when she called him cruel. We are the same, you and I. Your betrayal just made you cruel. His first wife's betrayal had been cold and calculating. Evangeline's reaction had been fiery. It was the reaction of a cornered animal, not a guilty accomplice. He picked up the forged letter Marcus had, accidentally, dropped on the floor. He stared at her handwriting. It was perfect. Too perfect. He rang the bell for his solicitor. Mr. Harrison, Alexander said, his voice raw from exhaustion. I want you to find out everything there is to know about Marcus Thorne's return to London. His finances, his partners, his lodgings, everything. And I want to know about his associates in New York. Use my accounts at Lloyd's of London. Spare no expense. And I need it now. Harrison, seeing the look on the Duke's face, simply bowed. At once, Your Grace. Evangeline and Harriet were descending the grand staircase as Alexander emerged from his study. He saw the bags. He saw her dress. You are leaving, he stated. I am, she said, not stopping. Mrs. Davies is arranging a carriage. You will not. It was a command. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, turning to face him. You no longer have the right to command me, Your Grace. I am Miss Whitehall again. You are the Duchess of Kingston, until I say you are not, he retorted, his pride warring with a new, terrifying emotion. I will not have you run off like a scullery maid. Then have me thrown out. It is what you do with things you no longer have a use for. Before he could answer, Mr. Harrison burst through the front doors, his face flush with agitation. Your Grace! Your Grace! I found him. Thorne. He wasn't hard to find. He's been bragging all over the city. And? Alexander demanded. "He's a fraud, Your Grace. His shipping venture is a phantom. He lost all the Whitehall money in New York on bad railway speculation. He's penniless, drowning in debt. He came here as a last-ditch effort. He's been staying in a cheap boarding house in Cheapside, not the Savoy, as he claims." Evangeline's hand flew to her mouth. "And the letters?" Alexander asked, his eyes fixed on his wife. "I spoke with the proprietor of the boarding house. Thorne has been paying another tenant, a disgraced forger named Inky Thomas, for calligraphy services for the past 2 weeks. He's been practicing a lady's hand." The air crackled. Evangeline let out a choked sob. It was true. It was all a lie. Alexander looked at his wife. He saw not the accomplice, but the victim he had first met. The woman who had faced him with defiance in the rain. The woman he had accused. The woman he had brutalized with his own damaged pride. "Evangeline," he whispered. Her name was an apology. At that exact moment, the front doors opened again. This time it was Marcus Thorne. He swaggered in, flanked by 2 rough-looking men. "Your Grace," he boomed, "I have come for your signature on our partnership, and to collect my travelling companion." He grinned at Evangeline. "Are your bags packed, my love?" Evangeline, seeing the proof of his lies, was no longer afraid. She was incandescent with rage. "You vile, pathetic fraud." Marcus's smile vanished. "What did you call me?" "He knows, Marcus," Evangeline said, her voice ringing with power. "He knows about your debts. He knows about your forger. He knows you are nothing." Marcus's face turned purple. You bitch. If I'm ruined, I'll take you with me." He lunged for her. He never made it. Alexander, moving with a speed that was terrifying in a man his size, crossed the hall in 2 strides. He seized Marcus by the throat and slammed him against the wall, lifting him several inches off the floor. "You touched my wife," Alexander snarled, his voice a low growl. The 2 thugs, seeing the Duke of Winter unleashed, backed away and fled out the door. "You will never speak her name again," Alexander continued, his grip tightening. "You will not set foot in England again. Mr. Harrison has already arranged passage for you on the next ship to Botany Bay. You will be tried in absentia for your crimes against Lord Whitehall. But I will have you destroyed, personally, if you ever return." He released Marcus, who collapsed to the floor, choking and gasping. "Get him out of my sight," Alexander ordered Harrison. Mr. Harrison and 2 footmen dragged the sputtering, defeated Marcus Thorne out of the hall. Silence. Evangeline was trembling, her sister holding her hand. Alexander stood in the center of the hall, his chest heaving. He slowly turned to face his wife. The fury was gone. In its place was a raw, aching vulnerability that mirrored her own. "I called you cruel," he said, his voice rough. "And I was. I saw your betrayal in the shadow of my own. I used my past as a weapon against you, because I was a coward." "Alexander," she whispered. "I was terrified," he admitted, stepping toward her. "I was terrified of the woman who read my books and challenged my ideas and ran my home better than I ever could. I was terrified of the fact that our contract was not enough for me. I wanted more. I want more." He stopped, standing before her. "When I saw you on those stairs, with your bags, wearing that grey dress, I realized that losing my inheritance was nothing. Losing you was like losing everything." He held out his hand, the same hand that had sealed their bargain. "The contract is void, Evangeline. I am ripping it up. I don't want a duchess. I don't want an heir. I want a wife. I want you. But I will not buy you. I will not command you. I am asking. Please, stay." Evangeline looked at the man before her. The Duke of Winter. The man who had saved her sister, given her a home, and then shattered her heart. And now he was offering her the one thing she had sworn never to trust again. His heart. She looked at his outstretched hand. She thought of her vow, a promise made in ash and bitterness. A life without trust was a life half-lived. It was a cold, safe, empty room. Slowly, deliberately, she put her hand into his. "My name is Evangeline Vance," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "I am the Duchess of Kingston, and I am your wife. And I trust you." He pulled her to him, his arms wrapping around her, burying his face in her hair. It was not the cold, dutiful embrace of their contract. It was the desperate, clinging embrace of two survivors who had finally found a safe harbor. It was not a perfect storybook ending. It was real, scarred, and fought for. And it was theirs. The betrayals of the past leave scars that never truly fade, but they don't have to define our future. Evangeline and Alexander were two broken people, bound by a cold contract, who found that the greatest risk, trusting again, was the only one that truly mattered. They had to fight their old ghosts and their own pride to turn a loveless bargain into a partnership of the heart. What did you think of Evangeline's journey? Do you believe Alexander truly deserved her trust after his cruel accusations? Let us know in the comments below what your favorite part of this dramatic story was. Thank you for listening to this incredible story of betrayal and redemption. If you enjoyed this journey, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this video with a friend who loves a powerful drama, and most importantly, hitting subscribe and ringing the bell. That way, you'll never miss another story from our channel. We have new dramas coming every week, and we can't wait to share them with you. Until next time.